I wasn't sure if this link was active, but I registered. It sent me here, so.
Yeah, it said session in progress, which is, it must flip over an hour early or something.
Yeah, I suppose so.
But we are not on until 2. So I saw
Yeah.
you sent the groups out. Is that what it was?
Yep. So, Chris should be able to upload that. So it should pre-assign everyone. So that I'm just kind of like fixing problems and adding new people instead of doing the whole thing.
Gotcha.
It looks easy, so hopefully he does it. But otherwise, I can always work from what I have. It'll just be easier if I don't have to do the whole thing in half an hour.
And I am just about through my notes to people saying, sorry, this is for special,
A different audience.
Different audience. So almost finished. I think I got a handful more. Thank you so much for your help.
Yeah. I think I'm just going to leave this connection live, but I'm going to take care of some other things in the meantime and keep an eye on my emails to see if more names come in, and then I can start categorizing them as well.
Oh, did she ever send the updated? I asked for it. I don't know if we ever got it.
I didn't see it.
I CC'd you in that note, didn't I?
Yeah, you did. So if it comes in, I will work on it. If not, we'll just handle it live.
There's another thing. I think we have the capability of host is to disconnect somebody. So
yep.
I think you're going to have the list of the red areas. You know what I'm talking about?
Yep.
And gently give them a warning and say, you're going to go ahead and delete them.
Do you want to BCC me on one of those emails that you send out so that I have kind of the language and could just say something similar?
Doing it right now.
Cool.
You can imagine it's just very straightforward.
Yeah.
And I said, if we have if you are on a board or something, just let us know.
Same thing with Mary. She's not connected to audio, so she can't hear me, but I don't know why this is like totally open right now. That doesn't seem right.
Isn't she registered?
She is registered, yeah. She's a board member from University of Minnesota.
My guess is she probably registered late or something, or just went.
She's already in our spreadsheet.
Oh, okay. Because if anybody clicks on it, it just allows you at any time. That's interesting. So there's not a holding room.
Yeah, that's a best practice learning for the next time is send everybody to the breakout or to the, don't let them in automatically. But
Yeah, I think that's an option.
it definitely is. And this is an AGB Zoom link?
Is it?
I'm asking, is this through their account? Because I would have volunteered to do it, but I know that our UNC accounts have attendee caps unless you
Yeah,
get special permission. So
I think somebody did a search and said that we can do 200, we can do 50 groups. So
yeah, but I mean like total number of like participants in the Zoom at once, at least for our accounts is capped. I don't know if this is an AGB license, if what their caps are, but I guess we'll find out.
I imagine Chris looked into that.
Yeah.
There were a lot of these people.
Yeah.
More than a handful. I'd rather be working on something else right now, but.
Well, all right. I will be back in 15.
Great. Thank you.
Hey, Paul, is Eve here with us, or is she just on video?
She's here. She just took a second to run off.
Okay, yeah. So I can't upload her file while there's people in this meeting. You can only edit meeting options before a meeting has people in it.
I see.
So we can manually do it, certainly in the first half an hour. Or we can all try to get out of here real quick and I can try to do that. Up to you. And it does say it's already recording. Do you want to be recording?
No. And it looks like everyone can come in.
An incredible amount, but I think there's a silver lining here. And a lot of people, when I say that, people say, well, what kind of silver lining exists after being going through the last year? Well, to me, it helps us identify and prioritize key resources that are required to advance our institutional missions, helps drive student success, and from a trustee perspective, in collaboration with their leadership team members, to really drive long-term institutional vitality. So at the end of the day, thank you for being here. Thank you for your hard work over the last year. And we're excited to kind of share some of the findings and opportunities. That's number one. Number two, you may have heard of or have met Paul Friga in the past. Paul's an experienced practitioner from the University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. Been a consultant for a couple of decades, so he's pretty thin on experience. Maybe you can work with us to get better experience, Paul. But no, Paul's got a lot of experience, both from a practitioner perspective and a consultant perspective, and we brought him on earlier this year to focus on higher ed transformation with public universities. And of course, a lot of these practices and principles can be applied to private institutions as well. But Paul's focus is on public institution. So that's number two. And number three, as you've heard me say before, my door is always open for you. Whether you're a member of AGB or a prospective member of AGB, my door is always open for you. We are focused on helping trustees serve as strategic thought partners with their presidents and leadership team members, focused on student success and long-term institutional vitality. It gets as simple as that. Student success and long-term institutional vitality. So without any further ado, Paul, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Henry. Welcome, everyone. Henry is the president of AGB. You may have met him many times before. We appreciate your support for this program and all the other programs you've been doing, Henry. Great thought partner and a leader of this organization. Good afternoon, everyone. I'm Paul Friga. I'm a clinical associate professor of strategy at University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill. And I am more fired up about positive change in higher ed than you can imagine. I know that some of you are feeling the same way. And to Henry's point, seeing some opportunities to make change, to transform in a positive way what we do in terms of public higher education. I've sent my bio and background and things, so I won't bore you with all that other than to say I'm a past consultant who put his heart and soul into higher ed. My father was a president of a community college. I love higher education and I know what we can do with it. And I want to do anything I can to help you through my role at AGB and through my research as well. This program is what we hope to do is build a community of like-minded leaders across this country and actually internationally who are interested in transforming their institutions. And when I say transform, I mean more than a 20% change over a 3-year period. So I'm actually trying to quantify some significant change. Special thanks to our friends at the Chronicle of Higher Education. Scott Carlson will be joining us as a special interviewer, a great colleague of mine who's one of the best at understanding the nuances of higher ed and leadership and finances. And he'll be grilling President Michael Crow and Regent Fred DuVal from Arizona State University in the plenary session of our program. I welcome all of you to turn your cameras on so we can get to know each other. If you're uncomfortable with that, of course you don't have to, but it's nice to kind of skim across and see names and faces. We had over 250 people register. We know it's challenging to get everybody on a Wednesday afternoon. So we'll see what we ultimately end up with, but we want to build this because it's a monthly program. I'm going to walk through a couple of slides here, and then we'll start right into our content. I sent these slides out in advance, so you should be familiar with them. Let's see, I got to move. Okay, here we go. Thumbs up says we can see the slides okay. All right, thank you. It's time for a new public higher ed. Each month, we'll come up with a new content. We've got these laid out for the year. We'll have a special deep dive case study with a university who has transformed, bring the president and a board member in to talk about that transformation. And then we'll move into group discussion to allow you peer-to-peer to share best practices and war stories with each other and get to know each other. And then in the end, we'll report these lessons out and summarize some insights. Transformation, as I mentioned, 20% change, dramatic change in form and appearance, extreme and radical change. I should have added another part of the definition is for the positive, because you could transform for the negative, I guess, but it's more evolutionary to assume that we're transforming into something positive. So that's our goal here in transformation. I mentioned the schedule for today. I've never been held to 5 minutes before. I'm going to watch Scott to see if he thinks I can actually do it in terms of my intro comments and a few slides. And then we'll go into our special guests. We will then allow you to carry on that discussion in your groups. We've already identified your groups based on your role. We have about 60 presidents and chancellors who have signed up, about 60 board members who have signed up, about 20 SHIO members who have signed up, and then another group of other interested participants. And then we'll group you by public, private. A few private institutions have snuck in here, which is fine. These lessons do apply. And then we'll do small, medium, large as best we can in terms of size. So we'll take care of the breakout assignments. If you end up in the wrong group, you can come back to the plenary, we can move you, but most of them should work out okay. About 5 to 6 people per group. So it'll allow some good, meaty discussion, and hopefully you'll definitely turn your cameras on for those. And then we'll come back together for a plenary report out. We'll summarize some themes. We'll talk about what's in the future for this group. Here is a slide I put together that's sort of been swirling in my head. I have yet to publish it. It should come out over the next month. But I keep thinking to myself, what are we transforming from and to? And these are the dimensions that I keep hearing, and I've run these by our panel. I think they're going to articulate how Arizona State has hit some of these and other areas as well. Tuition, there seems to be downward pressure on tuition. The 1.6 trillion in student debt for families has made it unsustainable to continue the 3 to 5% increases that we have just been going on for decades. And in no other industry did they just have a standard price increase every year without thinking about efficiencies and cost control and ways to decrease it or change the product offerings. So I expect, and we're going to see some new pressure for free community college. We got a few folks here from community colleges that might actually have some free education at a minimum, lower or frozen tuitions for a period of time. The differentiation of providers, as a strategy professor at UNC and an ex-McKinsey consultant, I can tell you the magic for your institution is to find your special sauce, to find the thing that's unique in terms of your offerings, your culture, the way you interact, and then scale that instead of trying to follow the isomorphism that's been so common in higher ed to try to all look alike. It's gotten us into certain trouble. Rankings have not helped with that. But they had to have something to measure. So looking for unique differentiation, I think, will increase over time. And the ones who do that well will grow in scale. Accessibility, it's critical that we take care of the least, the most vulnerable segments of our population. We've been actually making it harder, in some cases not easier, to get access. At Carolina, we have a thing called the Carolina Covenant at UNC Chapel Hill. If you qualify to get into Carolina, you'll be admitted. We will cover tuition. And we keep tuitions as low as possible. So we need to increase accessibility. Community colleges were particularly hit, and research I've done on financial impact, and we'll be covering that next month, of about 14% decrease of revenues across most institutions. Community colleges a lot worse, and they've been really losing enrollments. Partnerships with employers will increase. The virtual nature of campus service, especially in student mental health, student advising, all kinds of avenues that are going better virtually than they are in person will continue. Relevance needs to increase, and not doing research just for research, but research for real impact. Faculty are likely to become more free agents and will go between institutions a lot more, even internationally. And then the students are going to be, we're going to be defining students on a lifelong basis, not on the 18 to 24-year-old as the primary. And there's a big dip coming in that, as you know, about a 15% dip over the next 6 years in traditional students. We'll have more national universities to follow Arizona State's lead that is actually spreading across the impact opportunities, and more collaboration. And then credentials will become much more than degrees, and badges and certificates could become up to 25% of your product portfolio. So that's my predictions and some high level ideas. The last thing I'll comment on before we move right into our segment with our special guests is that when you think about a transformation change, it's not easy. It could be clear as to what you want to change and what you feel needs to be changed, but the change itself is hard. And here are a few things. When we work with universities through AGB Consulting, I've developed this methodology for understanding the need for change, readiness for change, and plan for change. So it should augment existing strategic plans, but it should be very focused on what needs to be the small set of priorities to make the biggest difference over the next 3 years, for example. So this is you can also use this methodology yourselves. You do a heavy data-driven assessment in the beginning, then you got to survey and check for the readiness of change to see who are going to be the change agents and who are going to fight it, and look at the incentives, and then find out very clear priorities, short set of priorities, and then have initiatives and owners, including some of the things like a prosperity gap, right sizing of programs and faculty, which we've experimented with. I hope we continue. Growing enrollments, looking at acquisition and M&A and alignment, and then more capital campaigns. So that's my introduction to this topic about transformation. Now we'd like to spend some time with our special guests, and I'm going to hand the microphone over to Scott, who will lead, Scott Carlson from the Chronicle of Higher Ed, who will lead this dialogue with President Crow and Regent DuVal.
Thank you so much, Paul. I guess I'm here as the guest interrogator. Thanks, Paul, for inviting me to be part of one of your programs again. And I promise I'll try to ask questions that are helpful to everyone here. When Paul and I met with Michael Crow and Fred DuVal ahead of this session, we, over time, eventually focused on the question of leadership. Michael Crow is one of the best known university leaders in the United States right now, and Arizona State certainly has been a place that has gone through tremendous change, as we'll get to in this conversation. And we wanted to find out how that dynamic works between board and leader at that particular institution, and what kind of lessons you can draw from this as you're trying to shift to maybe some pretty big changes following COVID here, or just some changes that have been planned for some time to adapt to the current situation. So I think to both Fred and Michael Crow, I would ask, how, just briefly, if you can get into it, how does the leadership dynamic there work? Is it something where ideas sort of pop out of the head of Michael Crow and then the board sort of backs him? Is it a collaboration between board and president? Is it a sort of a situation where ideas sort of bubble up and then they're captured by the leadership and then acted upon? What tends to be the most, what tends to be the method of change there, the engine of change?
I'll go first. So our board has 3 universities in our charge. We've got the ASU, University of Arizona, Northern Arizona University. We work very hard at creating system-wide metrics that hold our 3 presidents accountable for the system's responsibility to the state of Arizona. But in any case, but particularly with ASU's extraordinary growth and unlimited appetite, really important for us to also focus on individual campus metrics so that there's brand differentiation, so that each have as a unique and distinct both brand and function in our system. We use our 3 universities essentially as a chancellor, which is to say we have a team approach, and the board holds the 3 of them as a group responsible for the ultimate success and productivity of the system.
I think what I would add, Scott, to that question and what Fred said was, I think the brilliant way that the Arizona Board of Regents has approached this has been, as Fred said, the establishment of purpose and broad objectives, not narrow objectives, but transformational objectives, social scale objectives. And then they have allowed each university to take an angle at those objectives with a differentiated approach. That then has given them the ability to allow each of us to innovate both together through our new Arizona Innovation Alliance and individually. And I would say that, and Fred, you might want to comment on this. I mean, I think that, at least from my perspective, the driving thing that I'm empowered by as president of the university with our faculty and our staff and our team of 30,000 people that work at ASU is that I can say, this is what the people's representatives, the board, wants us to achieve. They want egalitarian access. They want great engagement in the birthing of the new economy. They want, a series of very significant objectives. And most of our discussions are about that.
Okay.
So, I think it's important to Michael's point. We try and really elevate our thinking, asking the question, what business are we in? And really, Michael has been the driver of this, but we've really embraced it. We don't see ourselves just in the degree business, and that's a really fundamental change in philosophy. We think of ourselves as being in the opportunity business. We think of ourselves being the economic development business. We think of ourselves being in the solutions business. We hold ourselves responsible not just for the outputs of our university, but for the success of our state. And it's an entirely different frame within which we can then draw the system assignments and the individual university assignments.
So in short form, just to make a point, so that means then if K-12 is underperforming, which in many areas it is, we raise our hand and we're just as responsible as K-12. We, the universities, if you take that on as responsibility, which our board gives us, you rethink everything immediately. It's not about what color the paint is in your boiler in, Unit 6 on the West Campus of ASU. The board doesn't worry about that. The board worries about why is K-12 not achieving more through the teachers that we're producing.
Starting with these big broad ideas, can that be a little dilute? Is it difficult to go at problems if they're, how broad are you talking about when you're talking about these big broad ideas that drive some of this change?
Well, I mean, they're not so broad that they're not within our bailiwick, meaning so we're the largest producer of teachers one of the largest producer of teachers in the country at ASU. And so if all of our teachers, the board asked us to track our teachers, how well are our teachers doing? How well are we educating them? Well, as soon as we saw that, we thought, well, not as well as we should. And so we're not taking vague responsibilities, we're taking specific responsibilities. Are we generating economic outcomes, social outcomes, educational attainment outcomes, and then how do we measure those? I mean, I think, Fred, that's what we focus on. So,
yeah. How do you, inevitably with change, there's always conflict, and there's internal conflict and there's external conflict. And we're going to talk about partnerships in a moment, cooperation. But just to handle the conflict part first, just because we're in just a very difficult time, and I feel like conflict bubbles up during difficult times. How do you handle that as leadership? How do you handle that internal and external conflict? Maybe start with the internal conflict, and what's the role of shared governance in these kinds of changes that you've been doing at ASU?
Well, Fred, why don't you comment relative to the way the board looks at conflict, giving us great leeway in resolving it, and then I'll comment on conflict at ASU. So,
internal, sure. So, we recognize that the faster the change, the more the conflict and the more the noise, and there's been a lot, but there's been a couple of keys. First is, to Michael's great credit, he articulated a very specific agenda based upon a charter for ASU that identified a set of values and a set of objectives that was sufficiently energizing and unifying that it made the change worth the anxiety. Second is that the board really recognizes that the indispensable asset in change isn't us, it's the presidents. And so not just it's important for us to speak with one voice, be unified, and support our presidents, but as much as possible to see ourselves, frankly, as disposable assets, and as the president as the critical asset, and therefore to try and deflect the heat and be a heat-seeking shield to the pace of change. So we're in that together, but it is really a function of the strength of the narrative. And I think to Michael and ASU's credit, their narrative has been extremely penetrating and consistent now for 20 years, and really is foundational to success.
I'll just comment on the overuse of the concept of conflict in academia. So, before Washington became president in 1789, there were 2 or 3 assassination attempts against him. He put down 2 attempted coups by his own military officers, including the Society of Cincinnati. He had conflict. He hung people who were in conflict with him. We don't have conflict in universities. We have arguments. Conflict is that. arguments are fine. And so what people don't realize is that I relish argument. I relish the debate. I relish the enhancement and the honing of the idea. So what we've been able to do is to find a way to listen to all of the reactions to where we're going or what we might be doing, to hone. People can see that we're listening. They can see that we're making adjustments, and then ultimately we make a decision. And so I think we've over exaggerated the role or the power of what we see as conflict when it's just normal argument. There's argument in everything. I'm not eating that cereal. Yes, you are. You know, that's an argument. And so I just think, I don't think there's much conflict. I think there's lots of healthy debate.
God, if I can jump in, if it's not the conflict that's holding us back from all making transformation change, which I think both of you agree that we need more change in higher ed, especially public higher ed. What's holding us back then? What's the barrier to making good transformation change if it's not just, you know, a disagreement? Where do we get our stalemates to limit university change?
Sure. So I'll give you a couple. Number one is, you know, we're making a lot of progress. Everybody across the country is, but the pace isn't sufficient. We still think of higher education in antiquated terms, and we like to think of every citizen of the world as a potential customer. We've got to sort of blow out the doors of who the customer is, we've got to Uberize the product in a way that we meet every potential consumer of education, wherever they are, whenever they need it, whatever they can afford to pay. And that sort of blows open the possibilities. When you think about more seamless fluidity, you know, thinking about degrees or transcripts less as like a medical chart, you know, from one institution, and more of a passport where you can move across different institutions. And we back ours up with a website between community college and universities where you can accumulate your credits across. So I think number one is just thinking much more expansively about the pace of the product, the style of the product, the delivery of the product is sort of one barrier. Second barrier is there are really bad incentives in the system. The ranking systems that equate excellence with elitism and barriers to entry rather than with expanding opportunity are just simply upside down. The funding formulas that incent inputs rather than outputs are frankly upside down. I would add unstable government partners. In the state space, you know, what we all really should try and drive for is how do we strike a partnership with the state where there's a clear mutual understanding of our assignment, and then a funding formula that supports that assignment to the degree that it's successful. You know, we live so much on the tuition dollars of foreign students, and you know we're one trade war away from that evaporating. Pell grants now only fund less than half of what they funded when they started. So predictable government partners is also a terrible barrier to success.
Yeah, what I'll add is, so 10 years ago, we had an underperforming engineering school in the way that we were looking at the future of the economy in Arizona and the need for competitiveness in the United States. We had 6,000 students on campus in engineering with a 68% freshman retention rate, which was well below where we wanted it to be. It was the standard look to your left, look to your right, one of you people is leaving kind of approach of the brutality of many public universities. And so we began a series of changes. We eliminated all 11 engineering departments. We created grand challenge schools. We introduced technologies. We changed leadership structure. We changed design. We changed expectations. And 10 years later, we have 25,000 engineering students, 18,000 on campus, 18,000 on campus, 7,000 or 8,000 online, brand new degrees, brand new schools, unbelievable movement in research. All these things happen. And so the key, however, to these changes was you cannot get unanimous agreement, so you don't try. You can't please everyone, so you don't try. You basically get consensus. When you have consensus, you move forward. Most universities will allow one or two people or one or two departments to deflate and decrease and eliminate all ability to move forward. And so the limit to progress is the desire to seek no conflict. No conflict is impossible. We argued every single departmental change. We argued every single address change. We argued every single introduction of technology, made a consensus decision, moved forward, and now we have 90% freshman retention and 25,000 engineering students completely transformed. And then that's transforming the economy here also.
Do you, in that case, Michael Crow, do you just sort of say at the beginning, we're going to go by consensus on this? It's not, no one is going to hold up this train. How do you sort of lay the ground rules around that ahead of time?
What we said is that, we've got this goal we're trying to meet. So our goal is an egalitarian university driving the economy forward, enabling the entire community as workforce. And then if whatever you're arguing isn't going to help us to get there, then that argument is over. So then the arguments now are about how we get to that goal. So the key, to Fred's point, is the goal. And this is where the board and myself are very, very closely aligned. There is no air gap on our goals. We know what we're working towards. So then I go in and then make the case, make the argument, have the argument relative to the goal. The board doesn't listen to the grousing and so forth, so long as we're making progress towards the goal. And so everybody knows that if it doesn't contribute to the attainment of the goal, then it's an argument in the wrong location.
I think a lot of leadership or sort of structures at higher education institutions get into trouble when there is that air gap between the board and the leader. Fred, just going back to your comment earlier, and I'm sorry if I'm using the wrong words around this, but you had said that the leader of the organization is sort of seen as the unassailable person, and then the board kind of takes the heat or takes some of the pressure off of that person, or guards them or protects them. Do you think that's a usual arrangement in higher education? Why or why not?
I don't, but look, we are the public fiduciaries, and that, to me, it's a dual-facing responsibility. On one hand, we're charged with speaking to the public needs and expectations of our universities. On the other hand, it is our responsibility to sell the value proposition of the changes that are happening and why they're happening in a way that is consistent with our fiduciary obligation to the state. So in that regard, we need to act like a board, and the board owns the strategy and the changes that are occurring around it, and then celebrating the success. And ASU is a wonderful example. I mean, by any measure, it is a stronger, bigger, more successful institution today because of the changes than it was before.
So one thing that we've done, apropos of what Fred is just saying there, Scott, is I make sure that the faculty and the staff knows that I am the one employee of the board. I am the agent of the board, and therefore through the board, the agent of the people, because the board is the representative of the 7.5 million people in Arizona. And they're communicating to me as their agent, as their employee, what they want this university to do. That reduces huge amounts of conflict once you come into agreement. And then the second thing that we've done is that we have been successful at ASU, and Fred may want to comment on this, on altering the cultural hierarchy. So we are a student-centric university, followed by the measurement of our success being the community, with the faculty not being the central piece of the culture, but being the means by which we attain those two goals. That's a complete reversal from Columbia University, where I was for more than 10 years, where that was a faculty-centric culture. The measurement of community outcomes wasn't necessarily in the interest of that university, because they had a different set of objectives. And so we've altered the culture, which has then given us huge opportunities to move forward.
That just gave me my first set of goosebumps. Those of you who have worked with me know whenever something hits me that excited, you're honing in on the core value of public education, and part of our mission is to help the public. So it's help society, not just help a set of faculty, not even just a particular set of students, but we have a unique opportunity here to think much broader about our mission. And I do believe that we have to find unique missions, and you believe that too, that we have to have, everybody shouldn't be isomorphic and try to be the same. So they should have a unique piece of that. One of the things we haven't got to, and President Crow, I know I told you 2:30, but we can factor in we put a 10-minute.
I'm okay. Yeah.
Okay. One of the things that's key is working with the faculty.
Yeah. So, I see that question regarding the faculty centered. I can comment on that.
Yeah, and faculty governance and we talked about it ahead of time. And Fred, you brought up the word incentives, and I hear this a lot when I'm interviewing leaders of campus, and I'm like, look, you likely have some unproductive faculty. Why wouldn't you think that you have some? And how can you get at those unproductive faculty? How can you do a little bit of pruning the overgrown branches and doing programs that don't have students and interest anymore, and go into new areas? How do you energize change when faculty have incentives to keep things the same. In fact, some presidents are pretty close to the faculty, so they don't want to rock the boat too much. How do you work that?
Well, what I would say is that old model, if you really want to make progress, you got to get that model out of your head. And so we've empowered our faculty. Our faculty are now intellectual designers. We call them super faculty. We've raised everybody's salaries. We've just adjusted how we're moving forward. We've moved to market-based salaries. We've enhanced benefits. We've come up with family leave for male and female parents. I mean, everything imaginable to make this place a fantastic place to work. And then the faculty senate, they are our consultative ally. So we've eliminated 85 departments, schools, or colleges, all by recognized vote of the academic senate. We've started 35 new departments, schools, and institutes that require their engagement, and hundreds of new degree programs, all of which requires consultation and engagement with the academic senate. So we treat the academic senate as a legitimate, focused academic governance body focused on what they're supposed to be focused on, which is the design of the intellectual institution itself. And I think the most important thing that we've done, and Fred, you can comment on this because you've been on the board twice in two different eras, and that is we've empowered our faculty to quit trying to mimic other places, design what you think is a great thing to do, and build that. And it turns out that puts a big smile on their face, and we get fantastic outcomes as a function of that. It's been unbelievable to watch.
Yeah, look, I think that's right. There's just unlimited change comes from asking different questions. The first question is, what do the students most need to succeed? That may or may not be traditional academic departments. What solutions do we need to solve, and with whom? Hundreds of partnerships at ASU, with whom can we solve them? And if we are meeting more needs of more students in more places, in more ways, and meeting more solutions, we can move the ultimate barrier to our ultimate success, which is public opinion, which is the way we express the value proposition is just very different.
So when I took office in the first year that I stood for graduation in 2003, we produced about 8,000 graduates. This year we'll produce 31,000 graduates. And that's a change in everything. That's like also from a student body that's now completely reflective of the socioeconomic diversity of our state. And it wasn't then. And so our faculty are proud of that achievement. Our faculty live for that. We've been recruiting people to this model like there's no tomorrow. And there were some people that didn't want to be a part of this. And we said, well, great. There's plenty of other places for you to go and be at the kind of institution that you would like to be, because the consensus here and our governors, the regents here, this is what they'd like us to do. So this is what we're going to do.
You mentioned partnerships. I think that's really important. External partnerships. How are you setting up those partnerships? Who's driving that? Is that driven by faculty members or leaders of the specific colleges at ASU and institutes, or is that driven at the board level, at the high leadership level? How are you making those partnerships? The most consequential ones, I guess.
Well, one thing, Fred, you might want to comment on is the drive by the board to build the partnership between the three public universities in the state, and then I'll comment on the ASU specific. Yeah.
So I mentioned at the outset that we have system-wide metrics, and we hold all three presidents, including in their comp package, the integration of those goals. And it may be that all three take a piece of each goal. It may be that different schools take different pieces of each goal. And that's part of the system design. From a partnership standpoint, we've got enormous partnerships. In Arizona, University of Arizona just bought Ashford. Three universities are together in a biomedical campus in downtown Phoenix, with all three doing enormously powerful research around healthcare and all of its manifestations. We have a relationship with the largest healthcare providers in the state. ASU has a relationship with Mayo Clinic, and literally hundreds of partnerships around joint degree programs. The Starbucks Academy has gotten a lot of attention, but that's replicated with Disney and Adidas. And I mean, Michael can address the specifics, but literally hundreds of partnerships across every single component of campus.
So Scott, what we've been doing is, to your question on levels, so we've been empowering departments, centers, colleges, schools to all act in an entrepreneurial and innovative way. Partnerships at every level. Now there's a little coordination, and we've appointed some senior university officers to manage or help manage these partnerships. We don't think in classic structural, top-down management. We think in sort of systems management, ecosystem management, environmental management, and then we're facilitating partnerships. And so we have almost 300 educational technology partnerships alone, backing up our 85,000 students that are pursuing their degrees online, and then supporting our 75,000 students that are pursuing their degrees on campus. And every single one of these partnerships then is managed at different levels. It may be at the department level, the college level, the university level, and then coordination among those. And so we don't take the classic structure of universities can't do much of this because it's too hierarchical. It's anti-innovation and anti-entrepreneurial sometimes in the way that it's structured. And so we've been trying to drive innovation, partnership, and entrepreneurship throughout the entire institution.
Listen, we're going to start flying this amazing plane down. Fred, you really laid it out when it was the question of how do you bust through inertia. You said you got to change the framing. You got to, and you've said it too, Michael. You got to change the definition of a customer. It's not the traditional old definition. It's anyone needs learning and education. You need new products. You need to change the incentives. You need to focus on and instead of inputs, you focus on outputs. You need to basically have an entirely new operating model too. You got to just start things from scratch. This could be viewed as overwhelming. All right, we got a lot of presidents and a lot of board members here. You've been doing it for two decades, President Crow. I mean, and I've read your books, and you're telling the whole story for everybody. How about some real pragmatic advice going from a community college to a small public to a regional public, and we've got large publics too. But for these smaller ones, how do they get started on this?
So I think there's huge advantage now that we know we have the technological tools to network, partner. Yeah, we have sports leagues. We're in the Pac-12. Okay, that's really good. How about the league that's going to teach sustainability? How about the league that's going to make sure that every kid can have a complete understanding of college algebra? How do we change the whole conceptualization of STEM majors? How do we triple STEM majors? How do we get every English major and every history major at all of these schools to also be completely science literate? Every single one. No institution can do that by themselves. They can only do that in partnership with others. So we got to break down these barriers that somehow every governing board has to solve every problem. No, we've got to find leaders in higher education who understand deals, partnerships, margins, alliances, holding people accountable. We got to sort of change the nature of the game.
That's a great recommendation. You don't have to solve this on your own. And you've mentioned all the technology partners. I know that you've worked with consulting firms. I know that you've worked with, all kinds of educational providers. Plus, you build these kind of competencies yourself too.
Yes,
I know you deal that you work with partners, and then you also build a competency around it.
And we're better at the end of the day because we've worked with all these other groups and all these other people. So.
Fred, advice to the many board and SHIO folks here. How can they get started on a track toward transformation?
Sure. So, the biggest challenge we have, frankly, is how do you stay relevant for, consequential to a university that's changing this dramatically, this quickly? It's just simply managing how we apply our bandwidth in a way that's helpful and value add is frankly it's a high class problem, but it's one we struggle with. So that's certainly one. I think secondly, the way I certainly view this is there's a role for a board to lead in front around selling the public. There's a role for the board to lead in back, which is to say to deflect controversy. There's a role around alignment to sort of take the president's flanks, making sure that our expectations are in perfect alignment and incenting that alignment. And then last, hiring great people and getting out of their way and not getting caught up in either the controversies or the small stuff, so that you can focus board attention on the big aggregate solutions, access, redefining the population, redefining our objectives for the institutions in the broadest possible public value terms.
Well, thank you both. A lot of comments have been coming through chat that I think our participants are as appreciative of as I am of these insights. You've weaved in your story. For everyone who's new to the program since the weekend, I sent an email out with a link with all the Arizona State strategic plans and initiatives that they share transparently to be a role model for other institutions to consider what might work in their context. I will be resending that to all additional folks who have signed up this week. So you'll have access to that, plus these slides, plus other articles that from the Chronicle of Higher Ed and other places that are speaking to the transformation of public higher education.
So Paul, can I give 5 seconds on Judith Kildo's question on the humanities and so forth? Humanities at ASU have never been bigger, faster, more innovative. It's been the most amazing thing. It's a huge success story for our faculty. It's just unbelievable.
And as a graduate of St. Francis University, small Catholic school, before I did my MBA, my PhD at Carolina, I appreciate humanities. I also appreciate liberal arts. I appreciate professional discipline as well. They can be complementary to both teaching people how to think and live, but also add to society. Thank you, gentlemen, very much. We will have a recording of this that we'll also share just this portion. As we move into the peer-to-peer discussion portion of our day, we will stop the recording. We can't thank you enough for your time. And as I mentioned earlier, they'll both be back for the 3 o'clock sharing of insights from the peer-to-peer discussion period. And they'll be back for some more Q&A then with the entire audience. So let me go back to my slides now. All right, thumbs up says you can see it. Somebody, anybody? Thank you, Eve. Okay, it's just a great story. You can't hear it enough. The details are worth paying attention to. Changing a mission to inclusion versus exclusion. It is significantly investing in priorities like online and just changing your whole operating model and culture. It's hard to do, but it's important to do. And that's what a transformation is. So we are now going to start a poll question. We are going to ask how you came to learn of this program. We have 12 more programs to go, or 11 more to go, and we need to do some analysis of the best way to reach folks in terms of letting them know that a transformation is underway. So if you're all familiar with this, you've had such a long period of time of poll questions. We appreciate you just responding quickly to where did you at first become aware of this program? What was the first? How did it cross your radar? And while we're doing this, we thank our marketing partners, the Chronicle of Higher Ed. They have been tremendous in putting a lot of time and energy into this. APLU also sent an email out to all their members, ask you as well. And then I have sent quite a few emails to you, as well as my LinkedIn posts, or another colleague maybe told you about it. And if you did maybe put that in chat so we know what it is. Let's get a few more responses. We're almost up to 100. We're getting close. Thank you for your inputs. And let's go. One more gets us 100, and then Eve, take a picture of it to make sure we don't lose it. And there's 100. Thank you very much. 81% voting. It looks like the AGB website and social has been the main feeder. Chronicle takes the lead, and then referral. And then APL, and then me, and then APLU, Ask You, and other. So thank you very much for that key information. You can close that poll. And now we're going to move to the second portion, or the third portion. We shrunk down our time a little bit, but we will give you 20 full minutes. You're going to be automatically assigned to based on the following criteria. One, your role, as best we could determine. We used your inputs and we think we did okay, but you're going to be with a president chancellor group. You're going to be with a board group. You're going to be with a SHIO group, or you're going to be with an other group, which is a bit miscellaneous. People who weren't really our target for the program, but have expressed this sincere interest in learning more. So your assignments are going to be coming out. If there's any problem, you'll probably just come back to our big group.